Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video, I'm presenting you guys my official June 2020 forecast. Now, before I get started with this video though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather-related content, and also make sure to share this video with your friends, family, and social media. Now, for today's comment of the day, I want to know, how do you hope June is going to go in your area? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Now, let's get into this video, and we're going to be starting things out with our precipitation forecast for June 2020. And as you can see, we are expecting some above average precipitation there for the Pacific Northwest. And this is mostly due to the fact that we are headed into a La Nina, and it has dipped very far actually recently, which is going to help us get La Nina conditions very quickly. And that really leads to usually the Pacific Northwest having above average precipitation. Also, a lot of the climate models are in agreement with this, that there will be above average precipitation for these regions. You might also be wondering what tools and data I'm using to make this forecast. Today I'm using a combination of the European model, the CFS model, as well as my analogs for this year, which is 2016 and 2013. So it's a combination of those four things to make this forecast. Now we're about to move on, and we're going to talk about another region that's going to be dealing with some above average precipitation, and then we're going to get into some of that below average precipitation. And then finally, we will get into our temperature forecast, followed by our overall June 2020 forecast. Alright, so here's our second area with some above average precipitation, and you can see from a lot of the Gulf states like Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and even Florida, and then up and down the southeast coast there, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and even into the Delmarva and southern New Jersey as well. These are some areas where I think there will be some slightly above average precipitation. Mostly for the Gulf, I'm thinking that we do have some tropical activity that is possible, and that would greatly influence how above average you are as far as this is concerned. Now, we even have a second area, and again, it's for those Gulf coastal areas, because we are expecting a tropical disturbance of some sort, whether that's a tropical storm or hurricane, to impact these areas very soon, actually. It is very possible that we are going to be dealing with a tropical storm of sorts here for one of, if not multiple, of these states down here. It probably won't impact every single one, but one of these areas down here is probably going to be having major impacts. And I think specifically flooding rains is my biggest concern with this one. If it gets stronger, winds could be the biggest concern, but as of right now, in yesterday's video we showed this, but there is a lot of rainfall that is possible with this one, and that could become a big impactful situation down there for some of those states. Now we're about to move on, and we're going to talk about where we could see some below average precipitation, and then finally we're going to get into that temperature forecast and overall forecast. Alright, and here's our below average precipitation area, and you can see it takes up a very large swath of the United States. From the northern Rockies, down through the southern Rockies, even through the Great Plains there, back up through the Midwest, the Great Lakes, some of the Ohio Valley, and then all of the New England states as well. We're all expecting to have some slightly below average precipitation for these regions. The way the jet stream is going to be set up just does not encourage storminess throughout these areas. And yes, you might be wondering if this will have major implications for how much severe weather we see, and indeed it will. I think this is really going to greatly impact how much severe weather we have, and I think it's actually going to give us a decreased amount of severe weather compared to what we're typically used to, especially there for the Great Plains like Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska. Those are areas that typically start to get really involved by the time we're into early June, and I think we're just going to have less of that, especially for those areas, specifically because of the lack of precipitation and storm systems that are going to be coming through. Alright, now we even have a second layer here of below average precipitation, and this is just where we're mostly confident. All of my models had below average precipitation for these regions and my analogs. So when all of those things come together, that really influences my obviously how confident I am in this happening. And really we're seeing southeastern Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, and Missouri. Again, a lot of those areas do expect to see a lot of severe weather this time of year, but I think that will be decreased for the month of June at least, just because of how lackluster that precipitation is going to be. I really just don't expect us to see too much precipitation throughout these areas. Alright, now we're about to move on, and what we're going to do is we're going to get into that exciting temperature forecast for the month of June of 2020, and then again, that's going to be followed by our extremely exciting overall forecast at the very end of this video, so stay tuned for that. Now the first area we're going to be talking about is our below average temperature region, and as you can see, it is actually a very small area here for the month of June that we're expecting to be at least slightly below average. As you can see, a small sliver of Montana as well as the state of South Dakota is involved with this below average region, but especially North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, as well as northern Michigan and the northern peninsula of Michigan are all going to be expecting to see below average temperatures throughout the month of June. Now, this month we're not going to be using a second layer of below average temperatures because our confidence isn't very high that we will see below average temperatures. Some of the models showed average or above average temperatures for these regions, but my analogs and a few of the models came into agreement that we would see below average temperatures for this region, and that was enough for me to call for at least slightly below average temperatures. But again, there is a few outliers that say maybe not, so our confidence isn't the highest in this area. However, moving on to our above average temperatures, we're much more confident in certain areas within this. As you can see, this takes up most of the country with the exception of the west coast there, which is an area where the PNA really has a big influence on what this region will see, and it looks to be positive at times and negative at times, and really what that's going to lead to is, you know, what's our average going to end up being after that's all said and done. Somebody left a comment on my video yesterday that was really, really true, and I wanted to share that with you guys actually. He said that his professor said, if you stick one foot in boiling water and then the other one in ice, your average would be near comfortable temperatures. And what that means is even though both feet are uncomfortable in different directions, the average would come back to comfortable, but nowhere is feeling comfortable. And it's the same story here for the West Coast during the month of June. Sometimes it's going to be colder and sometimes it's going to be warmer. However, that's going to come back to being normal, even though it's not really going to be average at any point. At least not for a prolonged period of time. It's mostly going to be cold at some points and warmer than at some points. Hopefully that made sense. Let me know if that analogy made sense. It really made a lot of sense to me. Now, we even have a second area with some above average temperatures here. The Four Corner States, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, southern Wyoming, as well as Idaho and Nevada. All of these areas are going to be in our moderately above average temperature region, and this is an area where I'm confident we will have some above average temperatures, and it could get very hot at times like we saw in May. I think we did see a lot of well above average temperatures for these regions in May, and I think that this could continue throughout the month of June. Alright, now we're about to move on, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our very exciting overall forecast that I'm very excited to share with you guys. Alright, and here it is, our June 2020 overall forecast. I'm very excited to present this one to you guys. This one is very complicated. There's a lot going on here. This is probably more than I typically would put in an overall forecast, but there's a lot to be said about the month of June 2020. And we're going to start in the Northwest like we always do and kind of just work our way east. So we're starting things out in the Pacific Northwest. It's going to be pretty stormy, and that's very typical for a La Nina, which is the conditions we're expecting. So I think it will be stormy at times for Northern California and then throughout the western halves of Oregon and Washington. But just to your east, we are going to have an area that is going to be a bit dry for the month of June. To your south, flip-flop. What does flip-flop mean? Well, flip-flop means it's going to be flip-flopping. It's going to be all over the place. Just like I said, it's going to be cold at times, warm at times. It's going to flip back and forth between those two, and that's what I mean by flip-flop. Now, to your east, heat waves for the Four Corner States, as well as southern Wyoming, and then also eastern Nevada. Also, portions of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas are included in that as well. I think it could get very hot at times for these areas, and we could have some very legitimate heat waves. To the north of there, we're going to see more dry than normal conditions for this darker brown region. And yes, we're expecting even more dry conditions here than the a bit dry area. To the north of that, I think more severe weather is going to be located here than anywhere else. I think South Dakota in through Iowa, northern Illinois, northern Indiana, northern Ohio. This whole red region basically is where I think most of the severe weather is going to be actually. It's right in between the cold and the warm, and also we're expecting near normal precipitation for these regions. Those things coupled together is really going to give us good odds at seeing a lot of severe weather in this region. To the north, we have our blue region. cooler than normal conditions are expected for this area, especially at times it could be cooler than others. It will be warm at times, however, as well, but overall it's going to be mostly cold. We see a gray area down there for Oklahoma, Texas, and then up through some of the areas like Kentucky, Tennessee, Illinois. That's where we're expecting less severe weather than what's typical, as it's going to be mostly shifted north than where it typically would be in that red region. So in our gray region, which is where it typically would be located, we're going to see a little bit less severe weather than what we would typically expect. Now, for the Gulf Coast, we're expecting tropical activity, especially for the first half. I don't know what the second half has in stores. Maybe it has more, but at least for the first 15 days, we are going to be seeing a potential tropical impact there. We see to the north stormy conditions for this green region. I expect above average thunderstorm activity for this entire light green region. We also see an orange region to the north of there, and that's where I expect it to be hot at times. Even though you're expecting near normal temperatures, I think it will be hot at times for sure. And then last but not least, for the New England states, flip-flop once again, just like the Southwest, we're going to see the same story on the Northeast. Again, it could be cold at times, warm at times, but really it's going to come in near normal. All right, now for today's comment of the day, I asked you guys, what's going to happen with our tropical disturbance that we have in the Gulf? And Kimberly Wilson said, Category 1, but who knows with this weird year so far? And really, I agree, because I think Category 1 is probably the most likely outcome, if not a strong tropical storm. However, really, it could do whatever it wants, especially with how good the conditions are. And if this year has told us anything, this will probably be stronger than a Category 1. All jokes aside, I'm going to be updating this tropical storm as of tomorrow. I'm expecting to make a very big update video for that Gulf storm, so hopefully you guys are looking forward to that. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and social media. I will see you guys in the next video.